Today we're going to do a deep dive into 7th arpeggios, specifically how I play them on the guitar. So I'm going to go through some of the most common shapes I use, but I'm also going to talk about how to build these arpeggios, how they come out of different scales, and all of the theory behind it. So this could be useful for someone besides a guitar player as well, but it really is going to be more guitar focused in general. Now, if you want the tabs and sheet music from this, you can join my Patreon or become a channel member here on YouTube. Most of my videos get demonetized here on YouTube because I'm talking about other people's music, and it really is helpful if you want to become a channel member or join my Patreon. I think you'll be able to get a lot more out of this channel as well. I'm also available for some private lessons at the moment. My life's pretty busy, but I do have a few spots open if you want a little more in-depth personal instruction. So let's get into these 7th arpeggios. Now, this lesson is really designed for someone who has an understanding of your basic triad arpeggios, specifically major and minor arpeggios. If you don't know what any of that means, then this is probably not the lesson for you. But if you understand how to play your kind of basic major shapes or minor shapes, then this is just going to expand upon that because we're just going to be adding on to these basic triad arpeggios. I will talk about it briefly at the beginning, but then I'm going to jump right into the 7th arpeggios. So we're going to start with our basic C major scale, just in one octave. Now, to build a triad, or to build a C major chord in this case, we're going to start on the root, then we're going to play the 3rd note, and then the 5th note. Or you can think of it as skipping over every other one. So I get C, E, and G, and that gives me a major triad. Triad meaning a 3-note chord. Now, if I play these as one, that's a chord. If I separate them, that's an arpeggio. So we're playing the notes of a chord separately. Instead of playing all of the notes at once, you can arpeggiate basic bar chord shapes like that, for example. To make a 7th arpeggio, we're going to stack one more note on top of that. So we have the root, the 3rd, and the 5th. If we skip over one more note, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7. So we're going to add this 7th note to the basic triad arpeggio to get, in this case, a C major 7. Root, 3rd, 5th, 7th. Now, there are 5 main types of 7th arpeggios. There are more, and I will cover a couple more later on in this video, but there's 5 main types that you'll find in most music. 4 of these come from the major scale, and 1 of these comes from the harmonic minor scale and from a couple other scales as well, but I will cover all 5 of those. To actually name these arpeggios, there's a couple of things. One is the root chord underneath, so the root triad underneath. We have a major chord underneath for a major 7th, and then we have a major 7th interval on top. Major 7th interval is 11 semitones, or 1 away from an octave. Now, if I have a major arpeggio underneath and I put a flatted 7th on top, in this case B flat, then I have a C dominant 7th arpeggio, or a C7. Root, 3rd, 5th, flat 7. C, E, G, B flat. I can also have a minor arpeggio as the foundation. So we have C minor, which is 1 flat 3, 5. The only difference between a major and minor arpeggio is the 3rd. So instead of having a major 3rd, E, we're going to have a flatted 3rd, or minor 3rd, E flat. So we have C, E flat, G. If we put a flat 7 on top of that, B flat, we get a minor 7 arpeggio. Now, if I take the minor 7th arpeggio I just played and I flat the 5th, C, E flat, G flat, B flat, I get a minor 7 flat 5, or a half diminished arpeggio. And if I take the half diminished arpeggio and flat the 7th again to get a double flat 7, I'm going to build a fully diminished 7th arpeggio. C, E flat, G flat, B double flat. I know that's the note A, but in this context it would be technically B double flat. 1 flat 3, flat 5, double flat 7. So those are your 5 main types of 7th arpeggios. You have major 7, dominant 7, minor 7, minor 7 flat 5, or half diminished, and fully diminished or diminished 7th. So let me play through all of those here, just in one octave. is major 7, dominant 7, minor 7, minor 7 flat 5, and fully diminished. One thing you'll notice if you go through them in this order, and there's a reason why I'm doing it in this order, is that each arpeggio is just one note different from the last one, right? The only difference between major 7 and dominant 7 is the 7th. The only difference between dominant 7 and minor 7 is the 3rd. So on and so forth. So it can give you a little bit of an easier understanding of how these things are put together, right? And you can tell, like, as I work my way towards the diminished 7th from the major 7, these start to take on a darker sound really overall, right? Those diminished 7th sounds. It's a classic kind of heavy sound you'll hear in like metal a lot, for example, but other styles of music as well. Whereas a major 7 is a much more hopeful sound, right? So you can kind of experiment with the different sounds built off the same note. I think that's a really cool way to go through it. So let's talk about playing this C major 7 arpeggio inside of a scale shape. This is the major scale shape that I start most of my students with. This is a caged position shape. I don't use the cage system fully, but I do like this particular shape as far as like teaching people how to play the major scale and stay within one position. But we can build this major 7 arpeggio inside of this shape. And that's a really good way to get a feel for how to build these arpeggios and how to visualize them in one position. This isn't the easiest shape to play, and it's not what I'm going to talk about later as far as like playing these quickly, right, in the style that we think of doing it. Right, there's much better ways to play this arpeggio that are much easier to pull off on the guitar, but this is a good way to visualize it and kind of see how the shape works and figure out where all of the notes are, at least in this particular position. I actually can make this feel a little more comfortable by just changing one note. So I'm going to take the 5th here, G, and move it from the A string to the D string, and we'll get this shape. This is one I learned from Frank Gambale off of one of his video lessons. It isn't one that I use a ton, but it does line up nicely with his style of economy picking. Haven't done these in a while. Close enough. So that's a nice shape you can build. So you can just like adjust a couple things to make it work, but that's how you build an arpeggio inside of one scale position. So let's talk about how I actually play these most of the time. The most common shape that I use is a 2-1-2 shape, and that just refers to how many notes are on each string. So I'm going to start on C here on the 3rd fret of the A string. I'm going to play 2 notes on a string, and then 1, then 2, then 1, then 2. It's a little bit stretchy, especially down here in C, but we have this nice fluid shape that rolls off the fingers well. And if you've done any kind of sweeping before, you'll notice this is kind of built around this classic major shape. It's really hard to do that low on the fretboard. If we just did 2-1-2 the whole time, and we'll go from the root up to the 7th. Now, what I usually like to do is go up to the next root, so you can do it a couple of different ways. Down here, I'd probably slide my finger up so to get that higher note. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about how I actually play these, but I will give a couple of ways that you can do it. So how I typically do it is I'll hammer on when there's more than one note on a string, and then I'll sweep through the other string. So, and then in this case, I pick a couple of the notes on the top. So that's how I generally will play this. Feels very smooth, and I can kind of keep the feeling of the sweeping continuing. It's just kind of like my pick pauses as I hammer on. Now, you can do it where you legato the entire top string too. Like that. That works well. I could do some sort of economy picking thing where I pick every note, but I also am using some sweeping. So down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. I'd have to practice that a little bit, but that feels okay too. Or if you're a madman, you could try to alternate pick through some of this. I might do that in parts, right? If I was just doing like an octave of it, but doing it in 2 octaves is pretty tricky. Anyway, I need to work on that some more. So there's some different ways you could play this from a technical perspective. I like the sweeping and legato. I think it keeps it nice and smooth. So I'm going to keep doing that as I go through these different types of 7th arpeggios. Now, to make the stretches a little bit less crazy, let's go up to the key of E at the 7th fret. And I'm going to build each of these 5 types of 7th arpeggios off of the note E. Now, when I'm up higher like this for a major 7, I could actually reach and stretch my hand out on the top E string instead of doing the slide. That might depend on what kind of sound I want, but I'm going to keep the slide in here for now. So we have E major 7, E dominant 7, minor 7. You notice for some of these I am actually stretching my hand out, but I could slide 2. Then we have half diminished, or minor 7 flat 5. Then we have fully diminished. That one's pretty crazy. So let me go through all of these back to back. That is a surprisingly tricky exercise, but a really good way to get a handle on these shapes and how they differ from each other. And just like I mentioned earlier, each one of those shapes gets one note different from the previous one, so you kind of have to adjust your fingering as you're going along. I think the major 7 might be the trickiest, or one of them, because you have that bar in there. I guess you have that on the dominant 7 too. So there's different hurdles to go with each of those different shapes. So you can experiment with those and see how they feel as you go through them. But that's all the different types of 7th arpeggios using this 2-1-2 system. Now, obviously, when we're actually making music, we don't want to just play these arpeggios straight up and down. That's pretty unmusical. It can sound cool in some contexts, but it's nice to be able to sequence these a little bit. So what I'm going to do is take the minor 7 shape as an example. I'm going to do some sequences with it. So first we'll do sequences of 3. So I'm going to ascend 3 notes and then go back to the previous note. I'm going to do this as triplets. So triplet, triplet, triplet. Now, I picked through it there because I was playing it slowly, but you could do some sort of combination of picking and legato, hybrid picking, whatever works for you. This is a weird shape, but I think as I speed it up, I favor some hybrid picking on the way up and then some legato on the way down. It's not one I do very often, but it's a cool shape. So let's do sequences of 4s as well. This one I do play a little more often as kind of a warm-up, but we're going to ascend 4 notes and start from the next note and do the same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Actually, I think I usually go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. I didn't go up to the high root there. You can, but this is the kind of exercise I'll do most often. It's a very tricky one to do, and it's kind of a weird combination of sweeping that I'm doing here. I'll put the pick strokes in on the tab, but yeah, that's how I usually do it. Let's see. Kind of a thing. A really good exercise, and you could do it with like a major 9. Great warm-up exercise. Sometimes I'll alternate pick through this one just as an exercise. I'm not even going to attempt to play that quickly right now, but it's a really good alternate picking workout. Now let me do a lick I might actually play using this particular shape. So something like that. So you see I'm going partially up, coming back down, repeat the notes on top, slide up, come back up a little bit, right? That's an example of something I might do, a shape that feels pretty comfortable to me as I'm improvising. So I'm not just playing straight up and down the shape, right? I want to make it a little more musical by doing some sequencing. Now, there's other sequences you could do as well. You could skip over every other note. Really good exercise, and that kind of breaks up the shape a little bit. But those are some examples of things I might do to kind of get out of just playing straight up and down the arpeggio. Now, let's go back to the key of C major, and we're going to build every seventh arpeggio from the scale. So off of every single note in C major, we have a seventh arpeggio that comes from the key. And the order of these chords goes major 7, minor 7, minor 7, major 7, dominant 7, minor 7 flat 5, and then major 7. So I'm going to take this particular 2-1-2 shape and work my way up the fretboard. And we're going to work on all these different types of seventh arpeggios and kind of get a feel for how they are down here where it's stretchy, as well as up here where the frets are closer together. Let's see if I can do it a touch faster. That is a awesome workout and something I'll still do every once in a while. It kind of gets the fingers moving while you work on doing these shapes down low and up high, and it goes through 4 of the 5 major types of shapes that we already talked about. The only one that's not in there is the diminished seventh arpeggio. So we're going to do this exercise with a different scale, and this one will give us the diminished seventh arpeggio, as well as a couple of other new seventh arpeggios we haven't talked about yet. So I'm going to take a D harmonic minor scale, and we're going to take this same exercise, go through each arpeggio from the scale. Harmonic minor is our minor scale with a raised seventh. In the key of D, we have D, E, F, G, A, B flat, C sharp. Here's all of the arpeggios that come from D harmonic minor. We have D minor major 7. We have E minor 7 flat 5. We have F augmented major 7. So it's basically a major 7th with a raised 5th. Minor 7, so G minor 7. A dominant 7. B flat major 7. And C sharp diminished 7. Fully diminished. There's our fully diminished arpeggio. So here's this new shape. We have minor 7 flat, or minor major 7. Minor 7 flat 5. Here's the augmented major 7. This is a really cool shape. Actually lies under the fingers pretty nicely. G minor 7. A dominant. B flat major 7. And C sharp diminished 7th. Now, diminished 7th arpeggios take on a really specific function, especially on guitar, but really in any instrument. So a diminished 7th arpeggio is built entirely of minor thirds, or the distance of 3 frets on the guitar. It's a symmetrical arpeggio, meaning this shape, I can play it 3 frets down, and it has all the same notes. And again, so all those shapes 3 frets apart are all the same diminished seventh arpeggio. They have the same 4 notes. So they'll be in different orders, obviously. It's a really great shape for guitar. If you've done any kind of neoclassical guitar playing, learned any Ying Weihmaupsing, you will have done diminished seventh arpeggios. It's a classic shred thing. I think it's fun to take them across the fretboard further, though. Right, really fun shape, and that one works particularly well. And you can kind of link it with maybe some of those diminished things you already do. That kind of stuff is very cool. A couple more things we can do with this 2-1-2 shape. One is to play inversions. So far, I've just been playing all these arpeggios in root position, meaning I'm starting on the root of that arpeggio. If I want to do inversions, I can play all the same notes, but I'm going to start on a different note. So for C major 7, for example, I could start on the 3rd E. So now I'm going to go E, G, B, C, and I'm going to keep that same 2-1-2 structure. These shapes get kind of weird in spots. That is not a particularly easy shape to play. But it is useful to know, especially for just memorizations purposes of the fretboard. I can start on the 3rd or the 5th as well. That one's a little easier, but also kind of awkward too. And then we can start on the 7th too. Now, some of these shapes I might not actually take all the way up to the full octave, 2 octaves, right? I think that one feels more comfortable to stop there. At the very least, these are good sort of finger twisters. And for me, as I kind of worked through learning these different inversions, there were certain ones that I found worked best for me as far as like how big my hands are, what the stretches felt like, what my technique is. And I kind of just leaned into the ones that worked well for me, because you can make that same sound, right? If I just start this shape. There's other ways I can play those same notes starting on E without doing this weird, really stretched out shape. But it is worth learning just so you kind of know where everything is across the fretboard. Now, you should do this with all these different types of 7th arpeggios. Just for the sake of time, I'll do it with a minor 7 as well, but I won't cover the other ones right here. That's a little bit easier than the major 7. We're going to start on the 5th. That one doesn't feel too bad. A bit stretchy at the top, but... And we start on the 7th. That is one I actually use quite often. And what's cool is if you have a shape like that that lies under the fingers nicely, I could also combine it with our first shape we learned. So C minor 7 here. If I could start to string some of these together. You got to get some bigger licks. That wasn't maybe a great example, but you can see how I'm stringing these different shapes together anyway. If we go back to our original shape, you'll notice I'm not using the low E string at all. Now, what we want to do is extend these as far as possible in whatever position we're in. So I can actually play more notes from C major 7 down on the low E string. We have the 7th there and the 5th. So I'm going to add those to this shape. I can get some lower notes there. Now, one other thing we can do is to start this same shape on the E string instead of on the A string. So in this case, I'm just going from the E string up to the B string. Now, there's a reason I favor these off the A string usually is because these are a little harder to play here. Same notes though. It's a little crammed there in the middle. But what's cool about this is I can then extend that to the high E string. And catch finish some of those notes on top. I have C and E on top. Because I'm sequencing these often, it's actually useful to learn these shapes because I'm not going to play it straight up and down anyway, right? Or whatever you decide to do with it. But you can build all these shapes off of the low E string as well. So here's a minor 7. All right, very cool. So there's the 2-1-2 shapes. Now let's take a look at playing arpeggios in octaves. So what I'm going to do here is play just a C major arpeggio, C, E, G, this shape. And I'm going to move that up an octave. So I'm going to start it here with the same finger on the 10th fret of the D string, and then 13th fret of the B string. So what I've done is made a symmetrical shape that I'm repeating in octaves. And this kind of mirrors what a piano player would do. So a pianist, when they're playing a C major arpeggio, C, E, G, it looks the same in each octave. So it's easy to jump from one octave to the next. And that's not always the case on the guitar, right? We have these weird tuning of the strings and stuff, right? Where if we play a C major arpeggio, which with whatever shape we usually use, it's not the same throughout the whole shape. So, but we can make it that way, right? By doing each octave the same. And this works okay with a triad arpeggio, but it works super well with a 7th arpeggio. So I'm going to take the same shape and add in the 7th, the major 7th B. We get this shape. Incredibly useful shape. I use these all the time. Not only are we covering more distance with the arpeggio than we would in one position, we're also moving across the fretboard. So these can be a really nice way to connect a lower part of the fretboard to a higher part of the fretboard. I'll usually use legato for these. But you can pick these as well. Definitely more tricky to pick them, but it's a good exercise anyway. Or I might do like a combo of picking legato, so like... Or maybe some sort of combination of different techniques. But that's how I might normally play these. Now, of course, we can do every other type of arpeggio with this particular shape. So we'll do dominant 7, minor 7, minor 7 flat 5, and fully diminished. You'll notice that one is a little bit weird. It's basically completely diagonal. Right? And some of these work better if you sequence them, right? There's another cool way to play a diminished 7th arpeggio. Now, I'm starting all of these on the 7th in this case. Right? That's the shape that I think is easiest to perform with this particular idea. But of course, you can do all the different inversions as well. So I could start C major 7 on C. That one's a little more awkward. Still useful though. You could start on the 3rd E. Or I could start on the 5th G. That one's pretty good too. It's a very nice shape. It's a little stretchy, but... Of course, I can kind of mix and match these things too. So I could start on the shape with the 5th. And then come back down. The one built off the 7th. Here's some inversions on the minor 7. That was not too bad. This one. And then the minor 7 built on the 5th. That feels really nice and kind of ends in this sort of pentatonic box. Just like I did with the 2-1-2 shapes, I could sequence these as well. So I might go up a shape, down, back up. Something like that. I could sequence these in 4s as well. This is pretty tricky to do, but it's a good exercise. I'll go up this shape and then down the next one. One I should maybe work on a little bit more myself, but it's a very cool idea. So here are 2 licks I put together to mix these 2-1-2 and octave shapes. This first one uses a C major 7. So we start with this octave shape. Slide up into one of these 2-1-2 shapes. Then slide up again into another 2-1-2 shape. And then into an octave shape. This time built off the A string, so the shape's a little different, but let me see if I can do it a little faster. I might have missed a note in there, but it's a very cool sound, right, to mix these 2 different styles of playing together. This next one is built mostly off of a C minor 7 arpeggio, but I'm going to use some E flat major 7 arpeggios as well as some scale tones just from C natural minor. And this starts as triplets and then turns into 16th notes. So we have part of this 2-1-2 shape, next shape, and then back. And we have this major 7 shape, built from that 2-1-2 shape. Then back to a C minor 7. Then we get this octave shape, scale tones, then into this 2-1-2 shape, where I do a sequence of 4s. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then some pull-offs from within the scale. So all together a little bit quicker. The last way I want to talk about playing these 7th arpeggios is with tapping. Now, I did cover this some in my advanced tapping lesson I did a few months back, but I'm just going to go over the basics here again. So we're going to take those original 2-1-2 shapes. I'm in E here, and I'm going to replace the single note on a string with a tap note on the previous string. So I'm moving this B from the D string to the A string with a tap. Same thing here. So I'm getting 3 notes on every string. So I'm fretting 2, tapping 1. Now I have to do hammer-ons from nowhere on the way up. Probably the trickiest thing about playing these particular shapes. If you can get a handle on that, these become a really nice way to play these arpeggios. It's something I learned from Michael Romeo originally, but all sorts of awesome players use this. This is a very common thing in the fusion and guitar a lot too, especially with these 7th shapes. Very cool, fluid sound to it. And it works perfectly as an exercise. It fits in one measure of 4/4 as 16th notes. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 and a 4 E and a... So I used to just loop those over and over again. Now let's do the different types. So we have, that was major 7, so we'll do dominant 7. Minor 7. Minor 7 flat 5. And fully diminished. Let's see if I can do these all back to back. That is a crazy difficult exercise, but gives you a good handle on these particular arpeggios. Now let me do that through the scales, just like I did with the original 2-1-2 patterns. And these are the exact same exercises, just done with different techniques, right? So instead of sweeping them and using legato, I'm going to be tapping these. So through C major. Great exercise. So let's try that with the harmonic minor scale, just like we did earlier as well. So we're going to have this D minor major 7 at first. This is a different shape than we've done so far. Very cool shape. Then we have the minor 7 flat 5. Now we have the augmented major 7. There it is. This is a weird shape, but cool too. Minor 7, dominant 7, major 7, and fully diminished. So all together. Just like with the 2-1-2 patterns and the octave shapes, I can do some inversions as well. So I can start on the 3rd of C major 7. That's awkward, but it's considerably easier than playing the 2-1-2 swept version of it. And I could do other inversions as well. Let's do the first inversion of the minor 7. So. That's weird. Kind of lies under the fingers pretty nicely as well. I could also do it off the 5th, for example. That one's not too bad. Or the minor version. Let's see. You can kind of work through these different arpeggios and try the different inversions. Now, of course, I can sequence these in different ways as well, just like I did with all the other arpeggio shapes. So here's one I might do. I might go like up a string, back down, all the way up. Just repeat the low or the top couple strings, and then back down. That kind of thing. You'll notice I can get these going quite a bit faster than the sweeping ones. Once you kind of get a feel for this tapping technique, it's really cool. You can do some pretty insane sounding licks with it. Now, as a final really difficult example, I can do sequences of 4 using a minor 7th arpeggio. You could do it with any of these, but I'm going to do it in A. So I'm going up 4 at a time. There's so much hammering on from nowhere with multiple fingers on the left hand. This is a really cool sound if you can get it going faster, though. Here are a couple examples of these arpeggios in some of my own music. The solo you heard at the beginning of the video is from my song Broken Epistemology. It starts with this really big sweep. It's basically an A major 7 without the second note on the G string. Some taps on top, and then it goes to a C minor 7. The next one is from the solo to my song Surface Tension. It mixes some 2-1-2 shapes with octave shapes. You have this half diminished shape, as well as this C sharp dominant 7 shape. I don't remember the exact order of the lick, but those are the parts of it. And lastly, here's some examples from the solo to my song Cosmic Void. There's these minor major 7 arpeggios. That's the main pattern. And lastly, there's these big arpeggios at the end. They're these 2-1-2 shapes with some extra scale notes added in. That's the first part of the lick. So there you have it, a deep dive into 7th arpeggios. I find myself using these all the time, way more than I'll use triad arpeggios. I really like the sound of these extended arpeggios. And I didn't even delve into more extensions like using 9ths or 11ths. I didn't even really talk about adding in scale tones to the arpeggios. I was just basically playing the arpeggios straight through. But there's so much you can do with these and expand upon these ideas and build into larger arpeggios and ideas. I'll use these for solos. I use these for riffs, sometimes even for melodic ideas in melodies. Really useful shapes to know just for the theory of it and how they sound, but also how to play them as well. So if you enjoyed this lesson, subscribe, hit the bell notification, like, comment, share, all of that good stuff. And I will see you in the next lesson. Until then, stay proggy.